Hey, welcome back. I'm Adam, and you've come to the Hoosier Garage. We're going to do a little bit more work on this old 72. So many of you all that have followed us for over a year and a half now remembers that we painted a roof on the van. It's pretty dirty right now because of all the dust that we've stirred up. But we did paint it, but there was one little area that really needed thought out, maybe even done first. I mean, I would preferably have done it first, but it was a decision I couldn't quite come to until just this week. And let me show you what it is. If you look up here, we have a hole in the roof, and we got some insulation going on. We got the insulation removed where this hole is. This is where the old vent was. Some of these vans had a vent in them, some of them didn't. A lot of times they get modified. If they're flat or have the vent or whatever, they'll put a lighted vent or a little fan vent in there. It just depends on who's doing what. But it's cut out in a circle because this is what used to be on there. I cut it out exactly because even earlier in the week I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. And what would happen was there's a little turn thing in there. I got it in the back. You adjust it from here, you open up a airway, and then this thing, like a little turtle shell, sits on top of it. That's the forward facing part, so you get the air that drops in here, it swirls around, and same thing back here, and then you get some fresh air. Well, it sticks up way far, not really for the aesthetic that I like for the van. One thing is we do have a vent in the sunroof up there, and we have these pop-out windows on the back doors. So I've kind of decided to eliminate this completely and just put a flat piece in there. Alright, you saw us cut out the hole, squaring it out on top of the roof, and I basically cut it just wide enough to cover the diameter of that hole. So it's about 8 3/8, somewhere in there. So it's a square piece, and I use this as the template. You saw that. And what I wanted to do next, I said we're not going to weld it in all the way, possibly risk a bunch of warpage with the welder that we have. Since it's up there on the roof, and well, that's already painted, we'll have these strips. They're like little sleeper strips, and they're 1 inch wide, so you get a 1/2 inch on this part, and you'll have the 1/2 inch on the van. And then 2 of these are cut at about 7.5 inches. See, they're shorter, so that when these longer ones fit up alongside of it. And this is the other one down here. It's just kind of split at 50-50 on the edge. So it'll be about like that. So we're going to have to tack these in, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to use a welder. We're going to use panel bond. It's one of the newer methods in body technology, one of the only ones, to be honest. And it is quite handy. It's good on these areas that are not as structural. We've used a lot of that on the quarter panels on the side, and you'll see those videos if you look through our channel. If you're not familiar, we use a little mix and match of welding and panel bond. Use it along the lip here, and we use it in the seaming here the seams behind here. So you get a good attachment. I don't recommend like doing frame rails or anything like that with it, anything massively structural, but it does do a great job on stuff like what we want to do here. And then all it should leave us in the end is a little bit of a seam around the top. It should be pretty flush, and we can blend that in with some filler, and we can blend some red paint in it. It's not a metallic paint, so that's to our advantage as well. So we're going to get these ready. We're going to clean them up to bare metal so that it'll have an adhesion property. You don't want to paint on panel bond because then it won't work as well. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so now the strips, you see one side still has the old EDP coating on it, and this side we've cleaned them up with the flappy wheel on our grinder. Okay, you want these to be completely bare steel because you're going to have the glue on both parts of this side and then that side. Okay, one part's going to be on the roof of the van and one part's going to be our new piece here. So you got all four of these, they're prepped up and ready. Right here you'll see I have a 1/2 inch line drawn all the way around. Okay, that's part that's going to intersect and touch on this. So we want to take the paint off of this side right here, just inside this line all the way around. This side here can remain as is. Okay, that'll give us our bare metal to bare metal with the panel bond sandwiched in between like it needs to be. That's what it was engineered to do, and that's what we're going to do. All right, I think I've showed this before, but we'll refresh. Might be a first time to our videos, so we'll do a refresh. Here's panel bond. If you notice, it's like a big fancy caulk gun. You could take this out. It's got a clip in here, but see, I'm not gonna take it out now. It's actually kind of difficult to pop it out. But it's kind of an oddball shape. You have a larger end here. That's the epoxy, the difference. All right, and then you have the smaller tube, so to speak. Well, you can reuse it at different times as long as you cap it off with the plug. You have this little collar that screws on, and then you have these special mixing nozzles. And if you look, they look like little stairwells in there. Well, it mixes it all together as you put pressure on it. So you can get a handful of those, and then keep your collar, and you just simply screw it on. Don't cross thread it. I believe the cartridge, the caulk part itself, is about $34. I went ahead and bought the gun. It was about $25 at the time. Prices may vary since a year and a half, but it works really well. It just works like a really high-powered caulking gun, really. So, when we go into this part of it, we want to lay our strips in there first. And we got two long ones like this, and then two short ones. So we want to put the equal length ones opposite of each other, and then the other ones will fit inside. Got a 1/2 inch on the van, 1/2 inch hanging out into the open for this panel to hang on to. I have an arrow on this particular piece because it has a slight crown to it. So I want it to kind of match the width of the van, the length, that sort of thing. So I have an arrow on both sides denoting. Yours may not if you're doing the exact same thing, so just keep that in mind. When you're using this stuff, don't put it on too thick because it will have a thickness factor. And if you don't do it right, it'll cause like somewhat of a warp in your panel. So if you put it on normal, and then you put it on thick through here and then back to normal, when you go to compress that, it's trying to squeeze it out and it may not even out. So you'll have a bit of a lump in the other panel, or just depending on which way. So whatever side's on the show side, make sure that you take special care to lay it nice and even. Do it as thinly as you can while still getting coverage. That was a little experience I had on the quarter panels. I had one little area where I went a little thick and I had to kind of work it out. I actually had to use a hammer and kind of crush it a little bit after it was starting to set up. Kind of a panic moment, but we got it through and it looks good now. So I'm going to go through and let's see, we're going to put some pressure back on it. And you can see it coming through there, and it's mixing both ends together. All right. We'll just ease it out to the end. Don't get too crazy because it'll want to come out, obviously. But if you've operated a caulk gun at all, you'll understand. I'm going to get a little board just to run a little test strip and see, make sure that our mix looks right. It looks like it might be working okay. This is an older cartridge. It's the one I use on the quarter panel. So we'll take a quick look at that just to make sure it's working right. Okay, it looks like it's got a mix of both of them in there equally. So, I also have these little small clamps like these. You can use different sizes. I just got 4 of them for this initial run. I'm going to take the 2 long ones first. And I'm just going to run it down lightly one side. So like that. Release that so it doesn't keep oozing out. Where I started, I have that little extra down here. I'm just going to take a little bit, just drag a little bit of it off. Now my next step is inserting it up in there. I'll take 2 clips with me. Take at least 1, and it'll get you started. It's sticky, but it ain't sticky where it will instant bond. There's a 90-minute work time on these. The clamp time is about 4 hours, so we'll want to leave it on there quite a while. And then your cure time is 24 hours. So we may not put the final panel in today, but we'll see how well we can work around it. Not likely with the clamps being on it. Remember, we got a 1/2 inch on, 1/2 inch off, so we should be able to kind of gauge that. One thing we got to do is clean this up. I just forgot. This will set though. It will set and it will hold until we're ready. Okay. Lift off any dust from it. Pretty good up there. Nice and clean. Very slippery, so you want to try to stabilize that as much as possible. Just even it up. Get an equal amount on this part as you do out in the open. You take a look at it from the top and see how it looks up there. So you can see that. I have a good little bit hanging out. That'll work. And then we'll take the other one of equal length to that one, which is the long ones. And that's up to you. You might be able to do them evenly. I just think for getting in the corners, they'll kind of intersect a little bit better. If you did do all 4 of them equal length, you can offset them. You know, kind of like where this one's here, it butts up to it that way. This one will butt up to that one, and so on. Whatever works for you, whatever's easiest, whatever you prefer to do. As long as you get the final product nice and flush, you're gonna win. Careful. I'm not going to put an amazing amount of pressure on them, just enough to where they'll grab and kind of hold it, because they'll want to really squish it and move the little piece right there, just enough to kind of secure that. Don't worry about any gaps or little holes that are showing, because your filler, preferably fiberglass filler, should take care of. Okay, with sunlight might make it a little hard to see. There's one of the flanges. Like I said, they're just kind of on there slightly snug. Just enough to give us this lip, a nice secure lip all the way around for that piece to set into. And if you're not sure you follow us, hopefully you're starting to get the picture by now. So we're gonna let this set up. We'll worry about that panel probably tomorrow. Okay, so 4 hours later, I did a little touch test on our panel bond. 3M panel bond, by the way. I was able to remove the clamps. I just have the piece laying in there at the moment. Obviously, it still needs other cure time, so I'm not going to be too aggressive with it. But it's actually setting in there nicely. I can pull down on it a little bit and no movement out of the piece from the van. So what I think I'm going to do, we're going to lay us a line out on this. I'm going to set it up there real careful. I'm going to place a weight on it with maybe a board or something underneath it. So basically a board on top of this with a heavy piece of iron that I have. And that should push it down, but not too much, and evenly distribute it. So we'll give that a try. One good thing while I was in that 4-hour window is I cleaned up the roof quite a bit. It's a little hard to clean these because you gotta get the ladders or you step up on the sides and you can reach so far. But it looks a lot better. Doesn't have all that crap all over the top of it. So we can get ready to do this. I'll have a nice clean install. So I'll show you what else we got here. I'll find me a board or two, but I have this mildly heavy piece of iron right here. And we could put like a piece of plywood here over top of it when we glue it, when we flip it over. And just lay it on top of it. Spread the weight out and lay it in there to where it should be pretty flush with the roof itself. And it doesn't have to be necessarily perfect, seeing as you really don't see that much unless you're looking down on me from a higher vehicle. And then we're going to body work it down anyway, so it should blend in pretty good. Okay, so since I was anticipating doing this tomorrow, I went ahead and capped all this off to try to keep it from hardening. And let's just see how it does after being wrapped up in tape. And so you can see it sets up fairly well. Now I had this before, plus I had kind of thought about it. I thought, well, if this hardens up, what are we going to do? We can probably do it manually. I don't have any more of these tips. I only had 2. This was the second one. Let's see what kind of action we got here. We'll take the pressure off of that. There we go. So we're going to try this. Take a knife, slash cut it. There we go. And you can see how hard it already gets, and this is with it pretty much encased. So that's pretty significant. It's not convenient, but at the same time, it kind of shows you the power that we're dealing with here. Let's see how far down we can actually cut this. This probably isn't what you would recommend, but as long as the epoxies get evenly mixed, and see, even down here, they're pretty solid. It's amazing. So I have a plan for that. Let's see what we can do. Just to go ahead, take this, get that in there, squeeze it out, and you see the 2 parts come together like that. Try to be even there with it. Take the pressure off. Wipe this off really, really good. You can put your cover back in there, and then take this collar piece off, and you can screw it back on there, and you'll preserve this. So I'm just going to take a putty knife that's clean. I know it doesn't look clean, but it is. I'm just going to work it around like you would any other epoxy. Just knead it in real good. Smear it around. And I say that would do. If we have to mix more, we will. Let's see how far we can get. I'm just going to take an old brush, paintbrush, and we're just going to smear it as evenly as we can around the edge. Again, I would normally recommend this, but I am out of a tip. I actually had this imagination that that tip with the fresh material in it would last longer than 4 hours. I thought as long as I could get back to it within the day, it'd probably be good. But that tells you what we're dealing with here, and some pretty solid stuff. So I spread it on there pretty even. So we'll check, and add a little bit there, a bit there. Now a lot of guys like to, if they buy a van that's similar to mine, that's had the conversion windows cut into it, and you probably know what I'm talking about. Like they'll take a van like this and get the great big window that comes down in here, and a lot of them want to return it back to this, where it's just solid, or they'll have a bunch of those windows on it. And they're usually the conversion factory type of deal. They might have a couple small ones, a big one, it just depends. Usually they are directly cut, as if we just cut a hole here and they fit them in there. Well, if you cut you a piece of metal of this gauge, whatever it may be on your project, cut it to fit with a little gap, much in the same way that we're doing this, and without welding it and warping all of it up. If you aren't, either you're not a good welder, or you just have a regular MIG welder, you don't have a TIG or something like that where you keep the heat low, that's an excellent method to cover up those windows if you're wanting to go back to a panel van, cargo van style look that is similar to this. Now mine have these windows here, which I actually prefer because it provides me that zone for a blind spot, and I don't really want it to be completely covered up. Plus it gives me an excuse to put some cool decals in here. But some people will cover these up, and see, the factory will always have this little drop right here. So if you ever wanted to do this out, I would cut along here where it's flat, take this whole panel and unwrap it where it folds around the cartridge of the door, and just put a flat piece in and wrap it, and then pinch it and weld it in. But when you have the ones that have been cut by a second party, or a third party, so to speak, I'm sorry, then cutting you a new piece, or if it's got this curve in it, get one from a donor van, from a junkyard or something, and you can cut you a brand new piece, put it in carefully, and do it the exact same way we're doing here, with the little flanges, and then laying in the piece. And just find you a way to clamp it or put something against it to hold it evenly, so all the edges are tight. And then you can just fill the rest with short strand fiberglass filler and some regular filler, and you can do it nice and flat. That beats welding them, I think. That's my opinion. All right, if you remember, I did write an arrow on here to give us some direction. Make sure we don't have any debris on here. And I'm just gonna lay it on there. Try to keep my fingers out of it. A little bit of an adjustment there. There we go. So we have the potential for it to lay flush. See, it's kind of buckling up. That's because of the shape that was already in it. So this is pretty good. There's nothing sticking up or lapping up on top of this part. So here's what we're going to do. I've got 2 pieces of maple plywood here. And I'm just going to lay it right square over the top of it, like so. Okay. And see, it kind of wobbles, so we need something to put even pressure so that it bridges the metal on each side and kind of help it all become even. That's where this extra weight comes in. I need to be careful with it not to drop it on the other part of the roof, because it is pretty hefty. So we set it in there like so, and there's this rib that goes down through here. We can put it right square over top of that. So it should give some pretty good pressure there, but not too much. All right, so next day we've removed the panel and the weight off of here, and it's really just subject to getting finished and painted. Like I said earlier, this is a non-metallic paint. It's just a solid rally red, so we can actually blend it into this area after we do our filler work. And that's just a matter of sanding all this little bit down where the paint was burned around these edges and kind of blending in that way, using some fiberglass filler to fill this seam, giving it a kind of a dusting of primer, and then you can hit it with red. We'll do that at a later date. This just kind of highlights the usefulness of the panel bond. It's very solid. It's not going anywhere. So you can see the rest of the roof. It's a much needed improvement over the situation we had there. It was full of silicone and had some rust, so we just cut it out, put a nice little square in there. So hopefully this video helps you just on any project you got. Like I said, on the windows on the sides, it can help with any thing on your hood if you're trying to do some work there with anything. Just any multitude of projects that need a panel put in that you maybe don't want to weld, or you can't weld, or just whatever the situation is. Like in this one, we didn't want to warp anything. So hope it helps you out. We got it covered up underneath already, and we're just set to do this work. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the Hoosier Garage. Check down here, right? I think it's down about there. Subscribe. Thank you. Like, comment, all that good stuff. Thanks for coming to the Hoosier Garage.